They stopped me at the gate. Not politely. Not quietly. Just loud enough for people to turn and stare. I didn't argue. I didn't flinch. If you've ever been betrayed by the people who were supposed to protect you, don't look away. This story begins with one moment at an airport, and ends somewhere no one expected. Watch closely. I already knew something was wrong, and I also knew I wasn't as powerless as they thought. The young officer held my boarding pass between two fingers like it embarrassed him. "Ma'am, step aside," he said, eyes fixed somewhere over my shoulder. I caught the time on the wall clock, 6:42 a.m., and the stale smell of burned coffee drifting from the kiosk behind me. My hands were steady as I placed my purse on the floor. That steadiness surprised me. Years ago this would have undone me. I asked one simple question. Why? He didn't answer. Instead, another officer appeared, older, slower, watching me more carefully. That was my first clue. When someone stops asking questions and starts observing, it means they've been told a story already. I followed them past the boarding lanes, past a woman arguing about liquids, past a crying child. No one looked twice. That hurt more than I expected. At my age, you think invisibility becomes a comfort. It doesn't. It becomes a warning. They led me to a small glass room near security. Cold chairs. A scuffed table. A hum in the walls that made my temples ache. I noticed everything. The missing screw in the light fixture. The officer's wedding ring worn thin. The way my name was typed wrong on the report he laid in front of me. False information. Serious accusations. Enough to delay me. Not enough to be true. I smiled then. Just a little. Because I recognized the phrasing. The rhythm of the complaint. I'd heard it before across dinner tables and voicemail messages, always disguised as concern. Who reported this? I asked. He hesitated. That hesitation told me more than the paper ever could. While he stepped outside, I looked through the glass wall and saw them. My parents. Standing near the coffee kiosk. My mother pretending to read a menu board she'd memorized years ago. My father staring straight ahead, jaw tight, hands clasped like he was in church. So that was it. The officer returned and cleared his throat. We just need to verify a few things. I'm sure you do, I said. Calm. Polite. The way women learn to be when they're expected to disappear without making trouble. He mentioned a call. An emergency line. Early this morning. Said my name had come up connected to concerns. I asked him to repeat the time. He did. It matched something I already had saved, filed away quietly months ago. My pulse didn't race. It slowed. While we waited, another small thing happened. A supervisor passed by, glanced in, then stopped. She looked at me longer than necessary. At my face. My posture. My age. She frowned, not at me but at the situation. That was my second clue. Minutes stretched. I could hear boarding announcements echoing faintly. My flight number. Final call. I imagined the empty seat that would carry my absence and felt a flicker of anger rise, and then settle. They wanted me frantic. Late. Disoriented. I stayed still. Finally, the officer returned with a tablet. His tone changed just slightly. "Ma'am," he said, "I need to ask, do you know the caller?" I stood up before answering. Through the glass, my mother looked over. Our eyes met. Her smile froze halfway into existence. "Yes," I said quietly. "I do." The officer glanced down at the screen again, then back at me. "The name listed here." "I know," I interrupted, stepping toward the door. "They're right outside." And for the first time, my parents realized I wasn't confused. I was ready. Not loud ready. Not dramatic ready. The quiet kind that settles into your bones when you finally stopped asking for permission. The officer opened the glass door and gestured for me to step out. His voice had softened like he was embarrassed on my behalf. "You're free to go, ma'am," he said. "We'll handle the rest." I thanked him and walked past security without looking back. My legs felt strange, steady but distant, as if they belonged to someone else. The terminal lights were too bright now. Everything looked sharper. Louder. I heard my shoes against the floor, the rolling of suitcases, a gate agent calling out standby names that no one answered. I didn't go to my gate. Instead, I sat on a hard bench near a window facing the runway. The sky was pale and restless, planes lined up like they were waiting their turn to be believed. I took out my phone and turned it over in my hands. No new messages. That didn't surprise me. Silence has always been their favorite tactic. A woman about my age sat beside me, fussing with her purse. "Everything all right?" she asked kindly without prying. "Yes," I said. And this time it was mostly true. A few minutes later, the supervisor I'd noticed earlier approached. She didn't sit. Just stood close enough that her presence felt intentional. "I'm sorry about the inconvenience," she said. "This shouldn't have happened." "It didn't happen by accident," I replied. He studied my face. "No," she said quietly. "It didn't." That was all she could give me. Policies, procedures, and a look that said she understood more than she was allowed to admit. Still, it mattered. Being believed, even partially, matters more than people think. When she left, I finally checked the missed calls. 3. All from my mother. I didn't listen. I didn't need to. I could already hear the tone. Concern wrapped around accusation, disappointment disguised as worry. I stood and walked toward the exit instead. Outside, the air smelled like fuel and rain. My breath came easier out there. I leaned against the railing and closed my eyes, letting the noise fade. That's when I remembered the envelope. It was tucked deep in my bag behind a paperback I hadn't finished in years. I hadn't planned to bring it. Habit maybe. Or instinct. Inside were copies. Nothing flashy. Dates. Times. Call logs printed out at the public library. Notes written in my own careful handwriting. Things I'd kept telling myself I'd probably never need. I pressed my thumb against the edge of the paper. My hand trembled this time, but not from fear. From something else. Relief maybe. Or resolve finally finding its footing. My phone buzzed again. This time a text. "We need to talk." No. I almost laughed. The urgency. The assumption that I would respond on command like I always had. I typed back slowly. "I'm busy." It felt childish. And deeply satisfying. As I waited for a reply that didn't come, I replayed the morning in my head. Not the confrontation but the years before it. The way they'd insisted they knew better. The way my opinions were dismissed as emotional. How decisions were made for my own good, without ever asking what I wanted. I used to think that was just how families worked. A voice interrupted my thoughts. "Ma'am." It was a young man in a security uniform, different from before. Nervous. "They're asking if you'd be willing to answer a few more questions." Voluntarily. I looked past him toward the building. Toward where my parents still were, no doubt rehearsing their next version of concern. I imagined their faces when they realized I wasn't rushing back. That I wasn't explaining myself. "Not right now," I said. "I'll be in touch." He nodded, relieved, and walked away. I checked the departure board. My flight was gone. I should have felt loss. Instead, I felt space opening up, unexpected and wide. I walked to the parking garage, each step lighter than the last. I didn't know exactly what would happen next. I only knew one thing for certain. I had walked away free. And for the first time I was carrying more than they realized. I was carrying more than they realized when I walked into the courthouse that morning. The building smelled faintly of old paper and floor cleaner, the kind that never quite masks age. My shoes echoed softly as I passed through security, slower this time, deliberate. I wasn't early, but I wasn't late either. That felt important. For once, I arrived exactly when I meant to. The probate courtroom was smaller than I remembered. Rows of wooden benches. A judge's desk worn smooth by decades of hands resting on it. I chose a seat near the aisle and folded my coat over my lap, smoothing it twice for no reason other than nerves. Around me, strangers murmured. Other families, other quiet battles. It struck me how ordinary this room was, considering how much damage could be done inside it. My parents arrived together as expected. My father walked ahead, confident, nodding at people he recognized. My mother followed half a step behind, eyes scanning the room until they landed on me. Her mouth tightened. No smile this time. That was new. They took their seats across the aisle. Close enough that I could smell my mother's perfume, the same one she'd worn for years. Familiarity can feel like comfort or threat depending on the day. Today it felt like both. Their attorney leaned in to whisper something. My parents nodded in unison. I wondered how many times they'd practiced this version of concern. How many drafts of the story they'd agreed on before deciding which one to tell. The judge entered and the room rose. When we sat again, my hands felt cold. I pressed my fingertips together under the bench, grounding myself. I reminded myself to breathe. The proceedings began slowly. Names. Case numbers. Formal language that kept everything at a safe distance. Their attorney spoke first, voice smooth, confident. He talked about family intentions, about responsibility, about protecting an estate from misunderstanding. He never looked at me when he spoke. That too felt intentional. As he talked, I noticed small things. My father's foot tapping, then stopping. My mother twisting her wedding ring over and over. They were nervous. That surprised me. I'd expected them to be comfortable here on familiar ground. When it was my turn, the judge looked at me over her glasses. "You may proceed," she said, not unkindly. I stood. My knees protested, but I ignored them. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. I didn't argue. I didn't accuse. I simply submitted documents to the clerk and waited while they were distributed. Paper makes a different sound when it's telling the truth. Heavier. Final. The judge skimmed the first page, then another. Her expression didn't change, but something in the room did. The air shifted. The murmurs stopped. Their attorney cleared his throat. "Your Honor, we weren't made aware of these materials." "That's clear," the judge replied. A small, sharp satisfaction flickered through me, and just as quickly I pushed it down. This wasn't about winning a moment. It was about surviving the whole thing. Questions followed. Not dramatic ones. Practical ones. Dates. Sequences. Clarifications. Each answer I gave settled something that had been left hanging since the airport. Not everything. But enough. At one point, the judge turned to my parents. "Is this accurate?" she asked. My mother opened her mouth, then closed it. My father spoke instead. His voice was firm, but there was a crack in it I'd never heard before. "We were only trying to help," he said. I looked at him then. Really looked. He couldn't meet my eyes. There was a pause. Long enough to be uncomfortable. Long enough for something unspoken to stretch between us. The judge made a note and said she would need time to review everything. No ruling today. A continuation. Disappointment flickered through me, but it didn't last. This wasn't a loss. It was a shift. As people stood and gathered their things, my parents remained seated. Their attorney whispered urgently, face pale. I gathered my coat and bag, my movements slow, controlled. My mother finally spoke as I passed. "We should talk," she said, her voice low, urgent. I stopped. Turned just enough to face her. "Not here," I said. Her eyes searched mine as if trying to find the daughter she remembered. I didn't offer her that comfort. I walked out into the hallway alone, the sound of my footsteps steady, my chest tight but lighter than it had been in years. Behind me the door closed. And with it something else had begun to crack. And I felt it follow me down the hallway. The fluorescent lights hummed above, too bright, too honest, exposing every face I passed. I didn't stop walking, not when my name was called softly, not when footsteps hurried behind me. Silence wrapped around me like armor, unfamiliar but steady. For years I had filled every gap with explanations, apologies, peacekeeping. Now I let the quiet speak. It startled people. It startled me. I pressed my lips together, tasting fear and resolve, and kept moving. Without looking back, I chose myself completely. Outside the courtroom doors, the air felt heavier, as if secrets lingered there. A clerk approached, her voice low, asking me to confirm contact information. I answered politely, nothing more. She nodded, eyes kind, and said she would be in touch. That simple phrase carried weight. Nearby, my parents' lawyer argued into his phone, frustration sharp in every gesture. I watched from a distance, saying nothing. Silence again. It stripped away their confidence better than confrontation ever could, leaving them exposed and scrambling. People avoided my eyes, sensing something irreversible unfolding quietly around us, unseen but undeniable now here today. I took the elevator down alone, my reflection wavering in the metal walls. I looked older than I felt, or maybe stronger. In the lobby my phone vibrated once. A message from my father, short and careful. I didn't open it. Each unanswered word felt like a boundary finally holding. I stepped outside into muted afternoon light, traffic sighing past. For the first time, I understood how my silence forced them to sit with their own noise. No explanations followed, no corrections, no reaching for control anymore, and that imbalance mattered deeply to me then and now, somehow suddenly profoundly. That evening, paperwork arrived by email, dry and official. Requests for clarification. Notices of review. I read every line slowly, hands steady. This was the cost of speaking without words. I made coffee too strong and sat at my kitchen table listening to the refrigerator hum. My mother called twice. I let it ring. Each unanswered call widened the space between who I had been and who I was becoming, and the distance felt necessary. Pain lingered, yes, but clarity followed, sharp and steady, refusing to soften, even when doubt tried to return quietly late at night, again alone listening. Friends asked gentle questions over the next days, sensing strain in my voice. I shared little. Silence protected me from rewriting the story to make others comfortable. One afternoon, a neighbor dropped off soup and didn't ask anything at all. We sat, spooning broth, watching daylight fade. In that quiet, I felt grief surface, not just for my grandfather but for the illusion of family unity I had defended for decades. Letting go hurt, but holding on had hurt longer. Silence allowed that truth to breathe, unchallenged, settling into me slowly, firmly, reshaping what loyalty meant now at last. Finally. Behind the scenes, responses trickled in. Official letters. Neutral language. So I noticed subtle shifts. People addressed me directly now. Not through them. Not around me. I was asked what I wanted. Such a small question, yet it landed hard. I took my time answering. Silence again, buying me space to choose carefully. Whatever came next would be built on that space, not fear, not habit, but intention shaped by years of restraint. I felt myself standing taller, quieter, less apologetic, aware change was happening, even if unfinished, unresolved, pressing forward, patiently, deliberately, without permission from anyone anymore at all. My parents remained silent too, suddenly cautious. That shift spoke louder than any argument. I sensed fear beneath it, though I didn't yet know why. Something they relied on had slipped beyond reach. I held my ground, answering only what was asked, offering nothing extra. Silence became my witness. It documented everything without distortion. As days passed, I felt steadier, braced for what would follow. I didn't know the ending yet, but I knew I would not fill the quiet to save them again. Whatever came next, I would meet it standing firm, finally choosing myself without retreat, without regret. That resolve was tested the morning the final notice arrived. The envelope was plain, heavier than paper should feel, and addressed directly to me. Not family representative. Not interested party. Just my name. I sat at the kitchen table, sunlight cutting across the wood, and opened it slowly. The ruling was clear. The estate was mine. Fully. No conditions. No shared authority. No room for reinterpretation. I expected relief. What I felt instead was stillness, deep and grounding, like standing at the edge of calm water after a storm. My phone rang minutes later. I answered this time. "We lost," my father said. No anger. No softness either. Just the truth stripped bare. "Yes," I replied. There was a pause. I imagined him sitting somewhere familiar, surrounded by the objects he'd always believed would outlast consequences. "We did what we thought was right," he said. I looked around my quiet kitchen. The chipped mug. The chair my grandfather used to sit in when he visited. "So did I said, and ended the call. That was the last conversation we had as anything resembling the family we once were. In the weeks that followed, things unraveled for them quickly. Not dramatically. Just thoroughly. Their attorney withdrew completely. The false report they'd filed was reviewed, then documented, then quietly corrected. No spectacle. No apology. But doors closed. Invitations stopped. People who once deferred now hesitated. I didn't push. I didn't comment. The truth, once placed in the open, handled the rest on its own. One afternoon I drove past my parents' house. I hadn't planned to. Muscle memory turned the wheel. The place looked smaller than I remembered. The curtains drawn. The lawn untrimmed. I didn't stop. I didn't slow down. I realized then that revenge hadn't come from watching them fall. It came from realizing I no longer needed to look. I met with the estate executor the following week. A practical man. Kind enough. He slid the final documents across the desk and waited. As I signed, my hand didn't shake. Years ago it would have. Back then I'd been trained to doubt every decision I made. Now my name felt solid on the page. "There's one more thing," he said, clearing his throat. He handed me a smaller envelope. My grandfather's handwriting, unmistakable. A personal letter. Not part of the will. Left just for me. I opened it in the car afterward, hands trembling despite myself. He wrote about choices. About seeing patterns repeat across generations. About hoping I would break one. The last line was simple. Take what they never could. I sat there for a long time, letter in my lap, letting that sink in. What I took wasn't just the inheritance. It was authority. Over my time. My voice. My future. I stopped explaining myself to people who were committed to misunderstanding me. I stopped smoothing things over. I let silence exist without rushing to fix it. My mother called once more. Her voice sounded smaller. I hope you're happy, she said. I'm honest, I replied. For the first time. She didn't know what to do with that. Neither did I at first. But honesty, I learned, doesn't need approval. Months later, I visited my grandfather's grave alone. The wind was light. The sky open. I told him thank you, not for the money but for seeing me clearly when others chose not to. I left feeling lighter than I arrived. On my way home, I stopped at the airport. Not to fly. Just to sit near the gates, watching people rush and wait and hope. The same place where it all began. I noticed how calm I felt there now. How ordinary it seemed. They had tried to stop me at the gate. Instead, they opened it. I didn't just walk away with what was left to me. I walked away with myself, and this time I kept going. If this story stayed with you, you're not alone. Subscribe for more real emotional stories about betrayal, strength, and quiet revenge. Because some truths deserve to be told and some stories deserve to be heard.